pillar number one, right? The biggest mistakes here is your personal credit. As we just mentioned over here, recent derogatories, having your late collection charge-offs, bankruptcies, again, these are all certain aspects that a lender is going to look at it and say, okay, well, what is the character and behavior of this report, right? The numbers tell a story about us. So the series of events in a short period of time, really can really understand, hey, was there a certain period that you had some lates or a charge off or a collection? As an underwriter, I ask myself these certain questions. Number one, is the debt open or is it closed? Right? If you have a collection or a charge off, is there still a balance? Right? It's going to make a significant impact on somebody's decision on being able to lend you an approval of a loan or credit card or anything, correct? So anything open has to be removed right away. There's no way any bank is going to give you, or at least the probability of you getting an approval would be very, very low. And then if it is closed and paid off, for an example, or settled, or if you have a late, for an example, is the age of the derogatory less or more than 3 years? Now, of course, this is all very subjective. There's always exceptions to the rule. And I've been able to bypass somebody having a late, just happened 3-4 months ago, but there was a good story. And I'm gonna be able to help you craft some of those stories today, later on, right now as well. But again, some of these recent derogatories, late collection charge-offs, if you do have a collection or a charge-off, and it is, in my opinion, best not to pay it off, at least in the very beginning. The reason why I say that is that, there's certain things in credit repair. I used to own a credit repair company back in the day. And my whole claim to fame is, hey, I'm going to be able to get you results within 2 to 8 weeks. And there's ways of looking at legal loopholes to bypass and get rid of these things. I've had my credit down to a 400, 450 before, and I understand that somebody helped me. So there are ways, and there are good people that can help you. But again, there's certain things. But if you start paying on that debt, if it's a collection, they call you, hey, just make your $20 a month monthly payments. That's called debt validation. So, there's a certain rule as far as, there's like 10 different ways in how you can remove things from your credit report. Now, if you have proven that you're making the small monthly payment and you validated that, now essentially the way credit repair works is that it's one of the tactics is, listen, yes, if the debt does exist, but it's how they sold the debt to the collection agency from the creditor, right? That process, a lot of times these collection agencies are not doing it correctly. And that's what you can contest, and that's how you can get things removed from your report. Lates, I would say, is one of the hardest to get removed. There are processors out there that can just remove the whole entire account. I have one person that, a processor that I used to work with, and, I had a friend of mine that had a 60-day late on a US bank account, and he provided, some elements of, hey, you got to close the account, change the address, all these different steps, and he did it, and he was able to remove the whole account. So I was like, oh shit. That's pretty interesting over there. But there's also the cause and effect, right? If you have a thin file and you have to remove that one late, will that harm your credit because you need enough data on your credit report, right? There's a lot of these different little small many things that cause and effect. Hey, should I just let it age, or should I just remove the whole entire account? Because there are ways of doing that. Again, I am not a credit repair, specialist in that case. But again, being in this industry for so long, when I want to hire somebody, I want to know exactly how they're doing things. I ask a million questions and just get down to the science so that I know that if they're full of shit or not. Right. So if you are going to use a credit repair company, I used to own a company called Approved Credit Score back, probably about almost 10 years ago. And here's some good questions to ask. Number one, do they charge up front, or are they a pay for deletion, or are they a monthly reoccurring subscription? You just have to ask yourself this question, right? If you're a monthly subscription, what incentive do they have to be able to help you and get rid of the derogatory, whatever it is, as fast as possible? The companies in the model for Lexington Law and these credit pros, et cetera, they want to stretch you out at least 10 to at least 15 months, because they're making $100 a month from that. So you're still making that. They're still making their $1,000 or $1,500 in total value for that client. So these are all certainly the logic, right? The common sense factor, from that. Now, I do have processors that they would charge a little bit upfront, and But again, I go through a full-on vetting process because it is a necessary evil within our industry, right? Because if there's that one or two, three things that are needing to be corrected, you know, you don't want to just say, I'm sorry, go ahead and figure it out and come back to us. There's, you know, I'm always a solutionist in figuring out that. If you do hire somebody, look, number one, you know, what are the past results? What are the proof? And not just doing some screenshots. Maybe if they're willing to provide, you know, a Zoom, log in some credit reports, some logins, some credit monitoring, looking at before and afters. These are all certain things that I do with the interview process of working with processors. Like I have somebody that I've been working with for over literally almost about 8-9 years now, and he's about a 95% success rate. We have collections and charge-offs, you know, inquiries. That's actually one of the reasons why I started Ink Removers, because I didn't want to pay $500 a file to him anymore. So that's one of the pain points why I created Ink Removers, and then it just became, you know, a thing that people wanted to use. Fun fact, actually. So just don't go off the sales pitch. Choose wisely. There's something called, you know, beating up your file, and if you work with these novices, what happens is that they start disputing. They send out these little templated letters, and when the credit bureaus verify that information inside of your credit profile, it becomes harder for the next person to remove it. So if you've gone from one credit repair company and they tried 5 times, and you're like, you know what, you're not doing anything, and you go to the second person, they did it 5 times, and that's not working out. And so now, like, Experian has that dispute 5 or 10 times, which makes it very difficult for the person who actually knows what they're doing to get that removed. Does that make sense, guys? So if you've ever defaulted, you know, if you haven't settled it, you cannot go back. A lot of us, if you've had some issues and you were able to work with somebody and they deleted it from your credit report, you have to let us know, because if you defaulted with Bank of America and you never paid for it or settled it, you need to let us know, because I'm not going to go to Bank of America if you have something in bad standings for me. That's the importance of kind of transparency. That's why I always tell my clients, give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's up to me to decide on what I can and cannot use. So these are all certain elements that I look for. There's also the back end reports. Right? It's not just the big three of Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. You know, there's hundreds of different credit bureaus in the back ends, right? LexisNexis, SafeStream, which is now one company. You have Innovis, which is literally the fourth credit bureau that a lot of people use. ARS, CoreLogic, Check Systems. You've heard of these. And so this is kind of a little bit of a summary of how this works. So if you file for bankruptcy, right, the credit bureaus don't go to the court system and look at, hey, this person just filed for bankruptcy. No, it goes through the courts, right? You file for bankruptcy, it goes through the courts, and then LexisNexis pulls that information from the court system, right? It's called PACE, PACE or PACER, I believe. And then the LexisNexis is the bridge between the credit bureaus. Does that make sense? And so they're able to verify a lot of what's going on through these third-party bureaus. So it's very essential that you do freeze some of those. Again, it's not 100% guarantee, but again, you want to put these roadblocks in place to help you with that. So to give you an example of what a LexisNexis report, that if you order it online, you can see that these are all the information that they have. And trust me, it could be 50 to 100 pages, you know, from that. But, you know, this is the information that pulls directly from the LexisNexis, and then it gets transcribed to the big bureaus from over there. So if you want, you can take a screenshot of this. Or if you want to freeze all your accounts, if you are in that, you know, credit repair, you know, category that you need to do some things with your credit optimization, this is probably recommended. Again, if you are in good standings, it's probably not good to freeze it, because a lot of these banks will pull a SafeStream or an Innovis as a backup bureau. Okay, and if they're frozen, that can also maybe cause it. Now it's a little bit of a catch and phrase, you know, from all that. Okay, hopefully you got the screenshot. Let's move forward. Credit utilization health. I gotta say, I had a lot of fun working with ChatGPT and Dolly with some of these pictures that it pulled out there. But these are one of the most common things that we face in our industry right now. And last week, I provided 10 different strategies that I implement for my clients on how to resolve this situation, right? It's one of the most common ways of what's stopping us from getting approvals. from leveraging anything from your business credits, from shifting the deck, credit partners, your private bridge lenders, there's ghost debts. Like my dad always said, if there's a will, there's a way, right? It's just how bad you want to work and get it all fixed. Next is your thin credits, right? Not having comparable credits can be like a resume with little experience. It fails to instill confidence. When you're working with these big banks and you're looking for 100,000, but you've only been able to show that you have $5, $10, $20,000 in comparable credit, it's hard for a lender to say, hey, I'm going to be able to give you that much from that angle. So it's always good to work on your personal credit. Here's some strategies that you can do. Some of my clients that have literally nothing on their credit profile is a blank slate. I'm like, okay, what's the first thing I'm going to do to help that person get a score? Authorized users are a great tool. If you have any friends, family, anybody that you can leverage their cards as an authorized user, as long as they're in good standings, high limits, low balance, longer establishment is going to help you. You add a few of them out there, your score is going to be 700, and from there you can go and get. I've gotten somebody in American Express or a Discover, Capital One. These are all certain ways. Even just having AUs, again, not huge limits because they're going to discount it from that portion of it. However, again, just starting from scratch. So if you are in the credit repair, phase and you haven't been able to build new positive trade lines right now, I would recommend either doing the Navy Fed pledge loans, the secured loans from like a Credit Strong or anything comparable to that. There's a lot of new fintech lenders out there that will just look at your banking activity, right? If your paychecks or your business, like Pedal and Tomo are just some examples. A lot of them out there right now. You can do rent reporters. There's Experian Boost, Sellerfi will look at your utility bills. And so these are all certain elements that I would start building as many positive accounts, even though if you're not able. But if you can do the secured, credit cards with the big banks or the tier 1, tier 2s, then I would recommend, doing that if possible. Again, we're all in different financial, scenarios, and you just have to be able to see what's best for you from that. All right, so I get this common question: when should I close out my credit building trade lines? Okay, and so the answer here is once you have established positive credits, which won't impact your older trade lines. Okay, so if let's just say that you have your tier 1s, which is your Bank of America, Citi, Wells Fargo, and Chase's, your tier 2s, your American Express, Discover, Capital One. If you can do, once you establish yourself with a good credit score again, you have enough, and now you're getting these big cards that we want to look and establishing. Then at that point, once you've increased your lines, you have some age, preferably over 2 years of seasoning, and you have at least, let's just say 5 or 6, 10 of those revolving accounts or installment loans. At that point, you have now a thick file, which you can afford to get rid of the younger ones, right? The credit building ones. Because, if I had to choose between just going straight into if I had to rebuild from scratch, then that might be, more activity and having more trade lines and data is, I think, a better choice versus just having fewer with just major ones, even if it's in a secured aspect. Hopefully that helps with some strategy of rebuilding yourself. All right, excessive inquiries, as we all know, no more than 4 to 6 within a 6-month period, sometimes even 12 months. Some lenders may look at the full 12 months of how many inquiries you've had, right? But each inquiry is like a pebble in your shoe. Too many, and the journey can become painful. All right. And so removing those inquiries is definitely, key. Just wanted to give a real quick, demo of something that we've done for one of our clients. This client right here had 21 on TransUnion, 40 on Experian, 9 on Equifax. And then within, what was it, a month, I believe, a month and a half, we were able to remove all of them. You can see how the score increased dramatically to 671 from there. So 2 on TransUnion, 13 on Experian, and 4 on Equifax on removing 51 inquiries. Again, these are all certain things that we've done for many, many clients. Of course, I can't provide the financial the personal information from over here. But wanted to give you guys a real quick study. Just a little bit of a 2 millimeter shift can make such a big difference. As you can see that this client, when we first started with him, he had a 666 credit score with a 55% utilization. You can see 62,000. Now we worked with him on our debt reduction strategies, right? The 10 that I have already taught you. And by getting him down to the 10%, you can see such a huge jump, almost 100 points of a jump, from that in removing those inquiries. That then got him in line to get him a business loan for 80,000. We had a few business credit cards for 87,000, and he wanted a personal loan at the same point, so we got him a 40,000 from there. In total, $207,000. But just wanted to be able to show this, how a small shift can make such a big difference in the outcome of what you're looking for. Speaking of, some credit repair, we had a client that really wanted to actually finance a car, and he didn't have a car. He was trying to move cross country from Maryland to Arizona. And when I looked at his credit, he had 0 positive accounts and 4 collections from that. Now, about literally 7 days later, we were able to remove the collection through my contact. But you can see how now he has no credit score, right? This is a Credit Karma. It went from a 517 because he had no data. He went to a 4, which essentially means 0. And by adding 3 primary accounts and 1 authorized user, you can see how we gave him a 200-point jump in such a fast period of time. He was able to get the car and move forward. But I just wanted to show that to you of, look, your credit is just a mathematical equation. How many accounts do you have? Are they in good standings, low standings at all? And just by being able to remove the derogatories, it will make such a huge impact at this standpoint. So the fastest way to get funding is really to understand your CFP, right? Your current financial position. And just like a GPS, right? If you're going to a destination, would you want to know what your exact coordinates of your GPS addresses, where either Google Maps is going to tell you exactly where to go step by step and to get to your destination? Or do you think you're going to be able to get there faster if you're flying blind, with a blindfold, trying to get to your destination? Who do you think is going to get there faster? All right, so business credit, right? One of the biggest mistakes that we identify and we see is, number one, of course, your recent derogatories, late collection, charge-offs, very similar to your personal credit and everything that we go through. It also can show up on the business side, right? Same questions. Is it open or closed? Is it age derogatory? Is it seasoned, or is it still there? Now, if you have late, right, very different from your personal credit, where you have that 30-day buffer of paying your bill before it goes into a 30-day late on your credit report. With business credit, the creditor can report it if it's 1 day past the due date. So if you don't have it on auto pay, right, that's going to kill you. I'm going to show you an example of a business credit report and how that can affect you, from that. Vendor credit also applies. We had actually one of our Radikal clients that had literally, they just hit their 2-year mark. He had an 800 personal credit score, $1.3 million in business credit. I coached him on what to put on his net income so that he paid less taxes but still qualified for the banks. We literally potentially had about a $400,000 to $500,000 run, for him. But because he was in the construction business and part of the whole way of, paying certain vendors a little bit late, it was part of the whole, it was just a common thing. Well, that situation with the vendor credit had a 30 or 60-day late, which literally killed 90% of his apps. Everything else was perfect. So it's very important, guys, to make sure that you pay your vendor credit and your creditors on time, especially not even 1 day late, from that. We still were able to get him 120,000, but again, a potential of 100,000 versus 400, right? You do the difference here. So what do you do if you do have some bad, elements on your business credit? Number one, you can attempt to dispute it. I would say that business credit is kind of like the wild, wild west. There is no, the FCRA rules don't apply as it does with business. Anybody can pull anybody's business credit anytime. So you can attempt to dispute it, but again, you're not governed by the same rules. So it does make it harder. Hence why there's not a lot of credit repair companies for business out there. Number two, another strategy is to be able to let that derogatory season. Okay, in that last example I told you with the construction company, right? Maybe a year or 2 years later, and he's been paying on time. That's not being habitual, and late. And a lender might be able to forgive that, just because lenders do understand that things do happen. If you look at the overall picture, but again, these times in this recession, it becomes harder. It's very different from a late or a charge off. One strategy is starting a new company or an aged corp to bypass it. If you have a charge off that's tax liens, public records, too many UCCs, MCAs, these are all certain things that you can then divert all your accounts and cash flow to a new or an aged corp, and you build up 3 months of business bank statements, and you're just diverting that traffic and setting it up. Remember, your website can stay the same, just the entity could be the difference. Right? My company's called Deliver Capital. That's just the website. The corporate entity is Axel One Holdings. So if tomorrow I want to switch that over to something else, it's not going to affect my branding, right? It's a little bit more advanced, but again, if there's a will, there's a way, right? Just like my dad said. If you don't want to do it yourself in dispute, this is the only company that I was able to research online that does some of a business credit repair. I don't endorse them. I don't know them. I haven't worked with them, so I want to be able to put that up front. But I did have a client that I did refer because it was getting him some denials, and he said it was anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 to have them work on it. Again, I don't know, but again, I just wanted to provide the only resource that I know that does exist if you don't want to do it yourself. And just like your personal credit, your business credit has something similar, right? Like a boat taking on the water, high credit utilization is like a signals of a sinking financial ship. And I'm going to show you an example of how that can affect you through a business credit report here very momentarily. But even though you have some flexibility with your business credit, having maxed out business cards can also result in denials, right? The revolving family of high credit usage, those are all certain things that can, shy away, have a lender shy away from an approval. So a little pro tip, obtain business credit cards from all the bureaus, right? Not all trade lines report. It's not like personal credit. So if you know the rules of the game before you play, then you have a higher chance of winning, right? Wouldn't you agree? So if you know that, hey, my experience is maxed out, it's, there's lates, collections, whatever it is, it's toast. But there's a whole bunch of banks that will only pull Equifax, and they're not going to look at experience. So choose the banks that are only going to look. If you look at the strength of your business credit reports, could be Dun & Bradstreet, could be Equifax or Experian, then you want to choose the banks that are going to be only pulling those lenders. That way you can bypass whatever derogatory in any other bureaus. Does that make sense, guys? Type of one, if you found that useful on how to bypass anything that goes wrong with your business credit, if you've been able to really identify what that is. So just like your personal credits, your business has inquiries being reported as well. Okay, and having too many business inquiries can also be one factor of a denial. It's not as common, I would say, as personal, but it is something just to be conscious of. Okay, so let me go ahead and I pulled this from a client of how an Experian business credit report looks like. And you can see, right, the normal address, who the clients are, who the borrowers are, or the principals, how long they've been in business, all the normal stuff here. But you can see that there is a medium risk at this point with a 48 score, right? Financial stability looks great, but the business credit score is a little bit off. And you can see here, the lender consortium risk rating is around a 3. Now, like I said, what happened here? So there's a few different trends that we're looking at. Business scoring worse, right? 47%. There's no bankruptcies, anything as such. So you can see that up to 30 days, remember I told you, a late can happen between day 1 to 30. And for whatever reasons, maybe it was auto pay, whatever the excuse is, but this really, really hurt me. It's actually that 48 was actually at a 12 a few months ago, and it's been creeping back up. But you can see that at December 2023, That 2%, that one late caused a major issue here, right? 623 was the second one. So for one reason, small payments, something happened. Those things can really make a big difference. Now we have to let this person age a little bit, or have to dispute it in some form of fashion there. Now, here's another thing that I want you guys to be very conscious of. So you can see how the balance, the credit limit and the balance is currently maxed out. Now, that's not the true limit. This is more closer to the 100,000 or 75,000, but the bank is reporting the limit as the same as the balance. That's showing 100% credit utilization. That's not correct. So we have to dispute and fight that, either sending in a valid bank statement or a credit card statement, whatever statement the person has, to be able to correct that from the bureaus. But that is hurting him in his fundability. So from the lates, right, I just want to show you this number of inquiries. If you've been going crazy all in the short period, it will show here. So you have to, do your round, let your file rest, just like personal and your business at the same point. This is a game of, it's a journey, it's not a race. And so all these different factors can be contributing to an approval or a denial, right? And certain banks are a little stricter and some banks aren't. And that's the art between knowing where to go that makes a difference. I want to also provide an example of a UCC filings. So those MCAs, they're going to file a UCC. Even if you have and I'm going to go in depth with this most likely next week, of UCCs and how they work and the mechanics of all of that. But there's certain ones like an equipment, which is collateralized by a certain asset, which it's okay to have. You can have a few of those because it's separated. When you have these MCAs, which is unsecured, that makes it a little more difficult. Your SBAs will be a UCC1, which typically can blanket all of your assets. Or if you have an accounts receivable, factoring, or purchase order factoring lines, those also can be UCC1s. What that means in a blanketed UCC, that it'll be very difficult for any other bank to go in second position, because nobody wants to be in second position, right? So just like a mortgage, you have your first mortgage, maybe you took out a second, like a HELOC. It'd be very difficult for a lender to go in third position, because if you foreclose, there'll be the third one in line to get their money back, right? That's what a UCC does. It protects that asset. Does that make sense? And how this works? So learning and understanding your business credit report can be very instrumental in how you structure your lenders. All right. Business mistakes on corporate compliance. Not having your Secretary of State in good standings, guys. It's a very common one. It could be as little as not filing your statement of information. One piece of document, right? Every year you have to pay an annual fee for your state. Every state's a little bit different, but that can put you into a not good standing. Now, this is an old one, of course, but I wanted to provide, forfeited, terminated, suspended, or active. You want to be in the active state. All this needs to be in good standings, because you can get denied if any of these are not in good standings, right? All right, so the way to check is to go to your Google search. You can type in, Florida, Secretary of State in Florida business search. Type in your company name. Once you go into it, you're going to do the business search. Type in your company name. You're going to see something similar to what I just showed you, and that will help with understanding if you're in good standings. For that, a little pro tip here is that if you're adding a credit partner, part of the utilization hack, then it's recommended that you add them either as an officer to your corp. Doesn't mean that you have to give them ownership. You don't have to say I'm signing up the whole entire company. But again, having them as a credit partner, as an officer, like I could hire a CEO and give him zero equity in my company, but pay him a salary to run the company. Right? There's many ways. Doesn't mean just because you're a CEO doesn't mean you have to have ownership, from that. There's ways around the whole thing. So having your Secretary of State updated will increase your chances if you're doing the credit partner hack. Does that make sense? All right, updating your business info. If you went from, as you know, you're a solopreneur, your home address, your cell phone, you need to update all information, your Secretary of State, your IRS, your bank statements, your business credit bureaus. Everything should match to be able to increase your chances of an approval if you had change in address, a phone number, website, emails, etc. Okay, so make sure that you do that because they all have to be in sync. Your corporate compliance, make sure that you're, instead of keeping your company name as generic as possible, right? You want to use acronyms, like Rad Enterprise, Del Cap Ventures, Help Me Grow Group, right? Do not put investments,
real estate, anything
real
real
estate,
estate,
properties,
funding,
you're just
credit
shooting yourself.
repair.
You're shooting yourself. Oh yeah, especially credit repair. It allows you to be flexible. So, we can't predict the future.
All types of
Only fans. Yeah, exactly. Look, guys, if you're in real estate at one point, you're like, no, I don't want to be in real estate anymore. I want to go and do, Turo, or I want to do e-com, Amazon. Having a Rad Enterprise allows you to be flexible in any type of category. You never know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, shit, I switched industries at least once or twice with keeping the same game. And Axel and Holdings literally is 10 years old. Don't register in these corporate industries, right? As we just mentioned, some of these investments, bail bonds, real estate, credit repair, protection, anything that's such. These are all certain ways of deal killers, from that. But if you are in one of these high industry, industries, there's a proper way of setting it up. Okay, so if you have your Airbnbs and your investments in real estate, and you want to have LLCs for each one of those, or your Turos, or whatever category in your high industry, you want to be able to have separate LLCs that's going to be taking in the money from whatever sources that is coming in. And then you want to be able to have that funnel through a compliant holdings company of some sort, right? ABC, Rad Enterprise, etc. And by having multiple deposits flowing through, depending on any lead sources that you're working with, can be the solution to work with your lender and get approved. Because the more deposits, the more revenue, business credit in a compliant fashion is going to help you increase your probability of success, right? Does that make sense? Does anybody have, any questions on how this is all structured? Please stay back and I'll be able to, answer them later on. But again, there's a proper way of doing it if you're already in these type of industries, kind of like a Joe, right? Make sure you don't have that. All right. So, the question is, like, if it was your money, how would you who would you like, most likely lend to, right? The person on the left looks like he's, working at a skyscraper. He's a professional, or this person who's a solopreneur in his home, working with, in the basement, garage, etc. Right. And so the difference between how we look, right? This is the first time I would say is it's okay to catfish the banks in this category. So looking on the left, you have a professional email, address, 800 number, 411 registered. You have a professional, email, social media, local listings, do your content creation. You have a profile with Duns and Bradstreet, all the business bureaus, versus the one on the right, which is a high risk industry, at Gmail, home address, no cell phone, website, social, right. If it was your money and you're like, is this person going to pay me back? Just a perception from the very beginning. This is the difference on what can work and not work in your elements. All right, financials, some of the mistakes that we look at. Number one, right, banks will lend about 10% of the annual gross sales. Merchant cash advancements will lend up to 20% of your gross sales. If you guys were here last week and the story with Marco, where he was actually, they over leveraged him and they gave him a lot more money, right? He made about, I think it was close to about $1 million. They gave about $250,000 in MCAs. And unfortunately, even though you have the credits and you're over leveraged, a big bank will not consolidate an MCA first to give you that money. So let's just say you paid off that MCA and he's going to be cash flowing $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month more versus paying those MCAs. Even though he has everything, the credit, everything, you would need to consolidate that first before moving forward. It's kind of a shitty rule, but that's the way it is. So you have to fix it. So here are some ways, some creative ways that we developed on how to fix that, to be able to get as many credit, business credit cards. You can tap into personal loans, having enough money to consolidate that. Tapping into credit partners and leveraging them with their credits or personal loans, right? A little mixture of all this, or ghost debt to raise enough capital to pay off those over leveraged loans. So it gets a little creative, a little more advanced. But again, I wanted to throw this out there because if you're in this position, don't think that you're stuck, right? There are solutions to every single challenge that we've ever dealt with, right? And we know how to solve them. For example, one of my clients that I was working with, Robert and Ann. So you can see this is a very common situation where if you get one MCA, you need to acquire a second one to pay for the first one, or a third one to pay for the second one. You're just training these MCAs. Well, this person making about $100,000 to $150,000 a year in his limo business called me up and he was like, "Listen, I think I'm about to go to bankruptcy, and I don't know what to do. I have all these MCAs. I'm over leveraged, and I can't get out of this mess." Right? Paying $13,000 a month, give or take, is a huge deal when you're not making enough money, when you're spending more than what you're bringing in. And so when I looked at his credit, he had a charge off, high inquiries, high utilization. We used the credit partner hack. His wife still had to optimize, remove the inquiries. Utilization was decent. We had to get rid of the authorized user that had the high utilization. So we first went with her, added her to the company, got her some personal loans and some business credit cards. Now that was enough capital to wipe out all of these MCAs. And so the credit hacking method that we utilized was able to get rid of the debt, put him back into a good standing, and then we used that to then get good debt with $100,000 with a business line, able to reinvest back into his company, etc. So again, these were all certain things of a little more advanced, advanced loans. But again, if there's a will, there's a way. All right. Another big factor that I identify a lot of times is your debt to income ratio. So essentially, if you look at your monthly income divided by your monthly expenses, that comes out as a ratio, used very highly much in your mortgage and personal loans for qualifications. So in this example, $10,000 monthly income, $3,500 monthly expenses, your 35% DTI. You want to be in that range of 35 to 40%. Say, having a high debt to income ratio is like carrying a backpack full of rocks. It's just going to slow you down. We have to make sure we unload as many rocks as possible. And so there's a few different options that you have if you're in this category. Number one, you have to somehow either increase your income or decrease your expenses. Is there anything that you can offload so that you can make sure that you're in that range where your credit score is going to be in good standings? You're going to be able to qualify for anything that you want. And a lot of times it's very common in the mortgage industry where you have to add a co-borrower to the mix to qualify together, and a joint ratio where you're looking at your expenses and income and their expenses and income, they merge it together, and hopefully that fits. So again, just two ways: increase income, decrease expenses, right? Very, very common there. So it's a very common thing there. Next is your banking relationships and activity, right? Having low bank scores, low deposits, and non-sufficient funds. This is going to be a deal killer, right? A lot of times, banks may ask you, "Hey, you have a no doc, financials, but we just want you to bank with us for about 2 or 3 months," right? What they're doing is they're looking at your activity and saying, "Okay, is this person who's stated they're making $250,000 or $500,000 or $1 million a year? Does the relationship that they're having with us really coincide with what they're stating?" And so that could be one big element that can work there. Now, one thing that you can do is if you're starting out, you want to increase your banking activity. I would start with some alternative debt, either some business credit cards, even a personal loan, especially in the startups, where you take that initial startup capital, you generate, right, you reinvest that back into the business. And now that capital that you had to inject in your business, generating some monthly income, that increases business revenue, we're now able to take that business revenue and now for, and qualify for some business lines and term loans and equipment loans and things of that nature. Right? Does that make sense? Right? So looking at, the startup capital, or even if you are established, but you're look at alternative debts. Because the question is, if I had 100,000, what would I do to put that money to work so that that money could be 150,000 or 200,000? How could I double my money? Right? A little bit of business concepts, from all that. So don't be afraid to be able to take some alternative debts, right? As long as it's good debt. Forget MCAs. Everything but MCAs, please go for it. All right, banking submissions here, guys. All right, one of the biggest mistakes that we find is, number one, not creating your story. And, by crafting this story, it's kind of like if you go on stage without a script, right? It's going to lead to a poor performance. If you're not practicing and understanding, number one, you want to. So here's some things that you can do to craft your story for yourselves. If you're going to go ahead and apply with the bank, manifest credit card, relationship manager, business line, equipment loans, whatever the case. Number one, thank the banker and an underwriter, right? When you're crafting this letter, describe your business, how long you've been in business for, something that you've accomplished, the highlights, right? The strength of who you are, and I mean, gloat about your accomplishments that you can provide here. Optional, you can choose why you're choosing this debt versus an existing one. When I went and applied for my 100,000 business credit card with Chase, one of the stories that I have, hey, I have a Capital on tap and a Bank of America, and it's around a 25 to 30% interest rate. Right, I'm about to start this marketing campaign, and I don't want to put money on those cards. Hence why I'm a 7-figure business. I want to be able to have a high limit, right? Just to justify the reason for the account over here. Okay, use of funds. How would you use that money, right? How that increase your revenue by 2 or 3x, right? Give me that 50,000. I'm going to turn that 50 to 150 in a year, or $500,000, etc. These are all certain things that I want you guys to look at. You should never talk to a bank and say, I need money because I can't make payroll. I'm in trouble. Please help me. Like, no, it's always I am growing exponentially, and I need this money to help support my clients, the accounts receivables. These are all certain things that can help you with that. All right. So one of the biggest, mistakes that we have is, hey, I'm just too busy with life, right? This game does require time, skill sets, dedication. There is a science behind what we do. There's a lot of moving parts, as I mentioned, but looking at, what is my 4 pillars? The framework is, what is my 4 pillars? Where do I stand? And then looking at your funding plan, as I taught you last week, of how to map out the best probability of looking at your profile versus the other one. And if you go and get applied, you apply, you get approved, you have 1 or 2, 3 different, accounts. Maybe it was enough, maybe it wasn't, but then those accounts are going to be reported to the business, the business bureaus. You have an inquiry on your personal, hopefully there's no UCC, right? And a lot of these things can be roadblocks for bigger things. So know how much money you want. Look at the very end and the goal, reverse engineer, and then put a plan to execute, right? You can do it yourself, 100%. It's definitely possible. But if you are going to do it, then I would say, look, budget in your time, prioritize. If it's 1 hour a day, 2 hours, or a month, just really dedicate so that you don't do it, half-ass. One of the things I would say is that you're not up to date with the new underwriting guidelines. Sometimes these banks, especially with this recession, we've seen, certain bank programs go away, streamline programs now requiring full doc, depending, of course, hey, every bank has different thresholds with UCCs. Some of them are 50, some are 100, some are 150. They could always change at a moment's notice. If you're not up to date, it can really hurt you. The insider news, right? Be 2 steps ahead. One thing is that we have really strong relationship with our bankers, and I gotta give a shout out to Hannah and my team. They are literally talking with our bankers because we send so much business their way that they're telling us what the bank's rules are, right? Like the forecast, what's going on, what's changing, what's, because
Cafe Bank.
when
Wow.
Cafe Bank just confirms, right, from us, and we're talking to our bankers at Chase, they're saying, yes, it's coming. It's not, I can't confirm with you 100% right now, but there have been talks with all one of these banks that they are increasing their FICO requirements from us.
Wow.
So mark my words, it's coming, right? So we got to be prepared from when it shifts. So 700, everybody on Facebook, and you need a 700 plus, right? Now it's gonna be 740. So we have to get in as soon as possible before we the requirements go through. Again, it could come back down, but these are all certain things that matter. All right, so it's kind of like submitting a no doc and low doc loans with weak credit. It's kind of like showing up to a gunfight with a knife. The only thing that's going to win in that fight over there, right? So understanding these rules can really be instrumental to your success and approvals to be able to focus on your dreams and your passions and what you're looking for your business to have that financial freedom. But knowing the rules of the game will be a huge difference. So, and putting it all together, again, this is what makes it so difficult. These are all the different moving parts that you should look at and understand. If you can organize it in some form or fashion, a checklist, and saying, am I good in my personal credit? What are the areas I need to work on? Business credit, the bureaus, right? I just showed you a copy of a business credit report. When was the last time you looked at your business credit report? I would go to Experian and subscribe to their credit monitoring. I think it's like $100-$200 a year, but you can get your report daily and see what's changed for such a low amount. Your NAVs isn't always the best and accurate, honestly. There's some free ones out there, but again, know the rules of the game before you play.